Well, what a difference a day makes, right? I mean, we would have had this space yesterday, it probably would have been in a less joyous tone. I guess everybody is aware of what happened this morning at the White House and how enthusiastic President Trump was to purchase for the full price a Tesla, having no clue how to ignite the car. There you go. He's gonna learn. I mean, his granddaughter drives a Cybertruck for over a year now, so or clearly close to a year now. So she's gonna teach him. So how did you? I know, Herbert, you did a live stream.
Sure.
How did you feel about
Yeah,
this?
let's get started. So first of all, yesterday, Monday, we had the 7th worst Tesla day in history of Tesla stock, falling by 15%. And the violence and the attacks against Tesla showrooms, sales, Cybertrucks, cars, people in general has been escalating out of control. And something needed to happen. Alexandra, you put together kind of an effort to ask the community what do they think should be done, what should the board do, what should Elon do. You created a good long list of suggestions. Luckily today there was two big announcements made, and we can ask the question to the panel here whether or not they think that it's enough to actually stem the tide. The first thing was Elon was with President Trump just a few hours ago, and he announced that he will be doubling, Tesla will be doubling U.S. production. Um, he said, as an act of faith in America, Tesla is going to double vehicle output in the United States over the next 2 years. And separately, or just immediately afterwards, Trump himself, President Trump, said that he will label violence against Tesla dealers as domestic terrorism. I think between these two, we should see the stock at least stop its free fall, at the very least, if not even stem the tide. So let's ask the folks here what you guys think. Is this something that is enough? I had a good live breaking session with Jeff. So why don't we start with you, Alexandra? What do you think, based on your list that you created, are these two things that happened just now enough?
Yeah, well, I mean, they were the most important ones. I think everybody participating in the last 2 days on X had these requests. It wasn't just me, and I'm very happy he did. I think the domestic terrorist act is going to really have an effect, because when the feds go for it, people will be incarcerated. This is going to be much stricter than they had imagined. They got a couple of $100 to be violent. Not sure that was a good calculation. So I'm very happy about that. I still have one a little bit on my heart. I would like to have somebody, a press person for Dodge. I don't want Elon to be the only person, announcing results and having to explain this and whatever. I think it would be great if we would have daily or weekly updates with a press person that's dedicated to Dodge, with the clock over the head showing how much they have saved for us, and then next one, obviously the next day the clock will be even higher, and making this very professional and to the point, taking a couple of questions and off we are. I think that would take the heat off Elon. He's currently the face of this all, and he's obviously the face of it all, but I think that would help taking him out of that fire. But other than that, I'm today much happier chap than I was yesterday.
Good. And what about you, Jeff?
It is a great start. And now you've got real, as Alexander said, you've got to really weigh the implications of, do you want to take this risk and, and harm somebody else's private property or put somebody's life at risk? I saw that there was a major rock or stone thrown at somebody's car with a kid. I think people have to think twice now about these things and what the implications are of doing it. It's appropriate. They're picketing or they're protesting. They're not protesting what Tesla is doing to accelerate sustainable energy. By the way, they were celebrating and Tesla and Elon just 18 months ago, and now they've been reprogrammed to think that again, for these political causes. If you tie political causes and you tie violence together, I'm glad to see the DOJ and FBI drive this home in terms of domestic terrorism at probably the request of the president, probably Tesla as well, to just again step this up. And the investigations are underway, and there's going to be serious penalties now for doing this. I don't think it goes away overnight, but I think it will drop dramatically, knowing how punitive the damages are. But I think your other point about communication and like what's actually happening, like what work is actually happening, like how are they actually transforming the waste, fraud, and abuse in government, and what does that actually mean, and then tying it to the budget and the implications, like what does it mean for people at home? I think you're correct. I don't think that's all been properly tied together and communicated. I think it's driving. It's an opening, like an opening's been given for a population to be radicalized and just to drive a wedge in it. So, anyway, if you bring this back to Tesla, it's good to protect Tesla owners and property. I think it's a huge start. I think the announcement of adding, I don't know if we're getting to that later, but just the announcement of doubling vehicle output is important. I think you could have broadened that too. I mean, because they're gonna more than double the output of energy as well. They're already building the new factory. So there's a lot of both capacity, and remember, there's a difference between capacity, there's a difference between sales, and there's a difference between output, and you more closely drive output and sales together. So this is a good sign. And some people ask, like, well, why bring that up? Like, they're already building these lower cost affordable vehicles. They're already building the cybercab. Like Tesla said, they're already going to do this. Like, is this really an announcement? Well, if you read what's literally 98% of the media will tell you that Tesla, they can't even sell a vehicle anymore with everything going on. And that's just not the case. If you study it objectively.
Jeff, I just want to announce they passed a 6 months funding bill, the government funding bill. That's done as well. Back to Tesla. Thank you, Jeff.
That's a big deal. It's a big deal for government.
Hold on. I think that's the House passed it. The Senate passed it as well?
No, not the Senate yet, but the House was obviously the more critical one because they had less over.
Yeah, but it's not a done deal yet because there's still some senators who are wavering. So we're still, anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just if you bring it back to Tesla, the reason it's important for Elon to announce this capacity increase, number one, listen to the words that he said. He said, based on the policies of this government, and so he's aware of the policies that are being proposed. He understands the platform. He understands what they're doing with EV. He understands what they're doing for bringing production back to the United States. I think there was a big move for Tesla to not put the factory in Mexico. And I believe that also, by making that decision on final assembly in Mexico and not doing that, I actually think they started moving some components that they're getting in Mexico to the U.S. And then, but yeah, I think Elon making that announcement on March 11th, with all things considered, what it tells you is that if we have the right products and we have them at the right price, we're going to double our output. And I think that is the important message. And it's going to be, and it's going to be supportive. It's not going to be like, this administration's trying to crush EVs. I think what this administration's trying to do is he's just trying to make it a more of a fair playing field for everybody, not have just one type of product be pushed at the expense of the other. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think it was important that he made that announcement today on March 11. With all things considered, we're doubling output of Tesla vehicles in the U.S.
Is it enough, guys? So we had these two. Just remember, this morning, right? Alexandra, you led the charge because the stock was in free fall. People were calling for Elon Musk to step down as CEO. We invited Dan Ives. He might be joining. He said he's in an airplane right now. He's going to try to join. He stepped up and he said it's time for Elon Musk to step up, to say something and to show that he's committed to Tesla. Meanwhile, we were wondering whether or not the board of directors needed to say something. The violence was getting out of control. It was escalating. It was on nightly news all over the place. Even here in Seattle, there were several Cybertrucks that were set on fire. There was gunfire at Tesla showrooms. So for them to this morning coming out and saying, number one, President Trump said he will label violence against Tesla dealers domestic terrorism, and two, that he's going to, Elon doubling the output, which I thought was a great thing to say that we're going to double the U.S. production output for Tesla vehicles means that he's confident that they will sell double the number of cars in the next 2 years. So Alexandra, back to you again. Are you satisfied with what you think, or do you think that Robin Denholm, chairperson of Tesla, needs to step up and do something?
Yeah, I would like to hear from her. I think these are moments where we should not only hear from Elon, especially since he has all these different roles, but we should hear from her. One thing I want to make very clear, key executives have really stepped up. We've seen a lot of laughs lately. We have seen Omead doing a couple of tweets. So we do hear from them. But you're right. Yesterday, I asked my followers what they would write in a letter to Robin, and Mickey was the one who really wrote a good one. And so what I did is the best 3 of them, I selected them. And since Robin is following me, I just took my guts and sent them to her and said, look, read these 3. And she acknowledged and said, thank you. So it wasn't as, and I don't expect her saying anything specific to me, but at least she heard it. And I think that was important, especially for me, but I also think for all of those who contributed. We want to make sure, this was not a time to do a survey monkey survey and write an official letter and wait 10 days. It was just too much fire for that. What happened today solved, in my view, the biggest issues. But I still think these are times where, it would just be good to have one person of Tesla stepping up. And I love Travis, but for them, investor relations is investor relations to institutional investors. It's not to retail investors. Well, guess what? We're 50% of investors. And I just think it would be nice that something's happening. So there was actually today, Lord Fracco, you know him, Justin, making a proposal to me by DM saying, you know what, I think investor relations should have their own X account because we're investors as well and communicate to us directly with an investor relations X account. So I said, that's a great idea. Wrote an email to Travis. I have no idea yet whether that is, going anywhere. But I just want to push them a little bit further in communicating with us, outside of Elon. It doesn't have to be all Elon, especially since he's busy now with other things.
Okay. Yeah, great. Those are fantastic things we need to be doing. Let's go hear from the rest of the panel here. Who wants to go next? Larry or Omar? Larry?
I'd be happy to make a few comments. By the way, I'm in Austin, and all you see in Austin is Tesla. Wherever you look, it's very encouraging. So I think everything that I've heard so far is very positive. I couldn't agree more with my colleagues, both Jeff and Alexandra, and yourself, Herbert. I think one thing would be very helpful, and I would like to see that, and I'm probably going to make the suggestion online, but I'd love to see Elon pay some public visits to Austin factory and be present there once or twice, a week, or once a week at least. It can be a flying visit, but make it public. Some, perhaps do a podcast with one of the guys from, perhaps, some of the guys who've interviewed him in the past from the Tesla community. Just some presence in the factory or some presence in one of the factories. I think if he could take the time out to do that, it would be very, very positive for the company, for the shareholders, and for Tesla customers in general. I know it's asking a lot given the pressures that are on him right now, but I think there would be a great value in having that done. Just an idea. But I love the ideas, and I'm really grateful to Alexandra for all the work she's doing And of course, Dan is just the man. So that's it from me.
Okay. Omar.
Yes.
Yeah. What's your thinking? Is this enough what you saw earlier today?
Well, look, I mean, I think there is an attack on Tesla and Tesla shareholders. They spelled it out very clearly on their website. We want to drive down Tesla's share price. We want to drive down Tesla sales. So this is an attack on not only all of us, but really our country, American competitiveness. And these people are really throwing a temper tantrum. They don't care what they're destroying in the process. And like a kid with a temper tantrum, they need to be sat down and grounded. So I think the domestic terrorism statement by President Trump was a good step in the right direction. I think ultimately this is much smaller scale than you would believe if you're looking at social media all day. I come here on X and I read posts and I talk to people. It's all they can talk about. I mean, people are really afraid. Is somebody going to attack me? But then you go out in the real world and everything's normal. Nobody's mad. The world is very different than the way you'd imagine it on social media. So I think the number one thing we can do is A, just live your life. Don't be afraid. The point of these attacks is to make you afraid, to make people afraid to buy the car. Go about your life, do whatever, show people about the product, be proud to be driving the most American made car, a car that doesn't pollute your community, a car that has safety technology that keeps you and everyone around you safe. And show support, you know. If you see other Tesla drivers, give them a thumbs up, say, hey, cool car. You know, thank them from driving electric, thank your service center employees, thank your showroom employees. You know, just show some positive support. The reality is there's a lot more of us who love the company and love the products than the negative people. And this is just an incredible year for Tesla. These guys, they want to talk big talk, make it seem like this is going to be the end of the world for Elon. Um, Elon's in the White House, right? Last time they got snubbed from the EV summit. Now they're having their own EV summit with just Teslas. So, okay, they've got some protesters maybe trying to vandalize some Teslas. We've got the White House and the President of the United States and the weight and power of the federal government. I think the company's going to be okay. And if you vandalize a Tesla, who knows? You might find yourself waking up in Guantanamo Bay, being waterboarded along with some guy from Al Qaeda. I don't know. So, probably good to just stay home, maybe write an angry comment on social media, but stay away from shooting up the dealership.
Hey, Omar, which website has got this notion of attacking Tesla?
Which side?
Which site? You mentioned a website with.
Oh yeah, so there's, you know, for example, the Tesla Takedown, that's a big one. It's organized by Alex Winter, who is Bill from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. So
Okay.
they've been organizing protests. They've been saying, look, we need to bring the stock down. We need to bring the sales down. You can see Alex Winter posting on Blue Sky. He's saying, look, it's working. Tesla stock is going down. Good job, guys. Keep going.
Okay, so this is actionable. So I think we need to consult an attorney because this is not just civil disobedience. This is direct damage, and it can be actionable. I think we need to look into that. Alexander, this is directly actionable.
But should it be actionable by Tesla Inc.
No,
or should
no,
it be
no,
by
shareholders.
retail shareholders?
By shareholders.
Look, I mean, there's two separate things, right? So there's the protests, which they're saying people be peaceful. But of course, there's some people who are breaking the law, they're vandalizing, they're trespassing. So it's kind of a, you know, a fine line. But I think what
No.
we can do is just say, look,
No, no, no,
these
no, 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 no. if they're looking to reduce the share price, if they're looking to damage the Tesla name and company, that is not a protest. That is honestly, I think it's actionable. We need to, I'm not a lawyer. We need to research the law, but it doesn't look good to me.
I don't think a boycott is illegal.
It's not a boycott. It's more well, I mean, we're not lawyers, and we're not going to we're not necessarily debate it, but I think the point Larry's making is valid. It's worth looking into. If there's an organized effort against against an equity, against a company, I mean, there are things that can be looked into. A boycott is legal. Like, it's just like, hey, a boycott of a particular brand. They could do that, but if they start using it, it's like, where's the money coming from? How is it organized, and so forth? Yeah, I mean, it's probably worth a conversation. But I think for this conversation, it's more about like how. I think the brainstorm here is, the conversation here is, are the right steps being taken to protect Tesla, people who buy the vehicles, people who make the vehicles, who sell the vehicles, and what does this mean to the brand, kind of short term, medium term, and long term? I think Larry raises a point. It's probably worth looking into.
I think so. I think this is not a conventional boycott. This is actually pretty serious stuff. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, this labeling of domestic terrorism. Do you guys think that is gone too far? When I looked it up and asked Grok, Grok agreed that it's actually the definition of domestic. It says here that the FBI's definition of domestic terrorism, if it's a violent criminal act driven by ideological goals like political or social motives. So eco-activists targeting Tesla for greenwashing or anti-corporate extremists. But if it's just random vandalism or personal grudges, that won't qualify. Context matters. Do you think this is a step too far, or is it a slippery slope, or is this appropriate?
Yeah. I think when you look at the vandalism and the violent action that has been taken, and you can tie it directly to what is being said on the website, then I think anyway, let's move on, guys. But I think it's worth researching.
I mean, I think really when you look at this, regardless of how you feel about Elon and his political views and Trump, this is really the definition of terrorism, an act of violence for a political aim.
Yeah.
So, a peaceful protest outside the store, is that domestic terrorism? No. When you get into lighting vehicles on fire, shooting up a store, bombings, yes, that should really be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And I think that's really all that they're saying, that there's going to be law and order here, that we're not going to allow this to continue to escalate. Because the fact is, if you're arresting someone who's shooting up the Tesla store or bombing the Tesla store, it doesn't matter if it's Tesla or something else. You let that kind of thing continue, they're going to be bombing something else, shooting up something else. So we do have to enforce our laws. I mean, you have every avenue in this country to protest peacefully, to boycott, to post on social media that you don't like the company. But when it gets into throwing rocks at innocent people, that's where it obviously veers into the criminal territory. And I think President Trump sent a strong statement today that that's not going to be tolerated.
And what do you do? Let's say you're in a parking lot and somebody throws stones at you or follows you and tries to intimidate you. What do? You call 911? What do you do in America? I really don't know.
You get the hell out of there.
But I mean, that's not going to help. I mean, you have to get law enforcement involved, right?
Yeah, you can call the police for what it's worth. I mean, but you got to get out of there. You got to get yourself out of danger and not confront anybody. I just want to say, I recently drove from Austin back to North Carolina, and I don't know how many thumbs up, smiles, requests to see the car. I can't tell you how much support I got. I got not one single negative view, not one.
Yeah, I mean, I think really what you do is the same thing you would ever do if you're attacked or mugged. You call the police, you get out of there. I think this whole situation has just been so incredibly effective. I think it's just infected everybody's minds. There's so many crazy things going on, and it's all anybody can talk about. It's all anybody can think about. The conversation always goes there. But in real life, I'm not sure that you're any more likely to get attacked as you ever have been. I mean, we saw in the Model 3 ramp days, Republicans flipping off Teslas, coal rolling, that type of thing. These violent attacks are very, very rare, but they're being so amplified on social media that it seems like everybody's just afraid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell. I mean, I can attest to this too. Like from shipping, product, in the millions, and then having the advent of social media. I shipped before social media, and then I ship product after social media. And I would tell you, like, we would have the real numbers. Like, we would know how many millions of products are being used. We would see this. We would see what's reported on social media, and we actually understood and kind of had a multiplier based on views and impressions. Like, what is that report on social media? What could it actually mean in terms of the affected population? And we tried to use it as an early warning indicator to jump on things. And what I would tell you is that social media really amplifies things based on the nature of the failure mode, or the issue. And it's kind of, it's not real life, but it is, and it's something that should be, addressed based on the nature of the issue. So the nature of this issue is like, if a car is being set on fire, like, that's a serious thing. But then now you have to look at, okay, or if the windows in a Tesla store are being smashed, well, that's a serious thing. But then now what you do is you actually look at your install base and say, okay, well, there's 1,500 of these stores. How many of them are being have actually been impacted? And you find it's one or two. And you don't want it to be one or two. You want it to be zero. But the impression that the media would have is like every store is being picketed, every store is being attacked. Every customer is under duress trying to go in and deal with their Tesla, and that's the minority. That's a very small thing, but it's an acute enough of issue. It's a serious enough issue that it needs to be addressed. So I think the domestic terrorism piece of it is important, and people should understand that the reason that they're tying these two things together is honestly is Elon's involvement in government, and the fact that there are organized efforts to damage product tied to a political reason or cause. So that's why they're able to upgrade that and treat it as such. And I tell you, what it does is it just opens up the prosecutorial, landscape for the issue, and it just becomes much more serious. Because the way that the police in various localities prosecute issues is very different. I remember, being traveling for work in San Jose, Silicon Valley area, and having the windows on my rental smashed, and the way that the police deal with an issue there versus where they would deal with it in another town they're just completely different in terms of it. So now having kind of this federal, now it could be elevated to it's a federal offense, and then the punitive nature of the charges become much more severe. You're talking, potentially years in jail. Based on the seriousness of it, it could be lifetime. I was doing some reading. It could be life. So I mean, it really just opens it up, and it just makes people have to think twice. Am I going to get paid a couple $100s to do this or that, or not get paid at all? Just think I'm doing something cool on a whim, and now like, oh, my entire life may change, and I'm risking my entire life to do this. Is it really worth it?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Jeff, for that. Let's move on to the main.
Let me say one more thing first. I think really this isn't really about the violence, because the violent attacks are pretty isolated, and it's still going to be easy to fake something or even Photoshop something just to kind of get it viral on social media. these people are trying to take down Tesla, not because they even have any feelings about Tesla, but just to hurt Elon. And they've crafted a biological weapon, a mind virus, if you will, where it's an idea to scare people away from owning Teslas, an idea that you're a Nazi if you own one, someone's going to hurt you, and, actually you deserve to get hurt for driving this car. And we are all the carriers of this. Every time we see one of these images, we share one, we're not talking about the new Megapack factory or what happened with FSD or the new vehicle models. Just by even addressing this, it's just dominated the media. It's dominated everybody's emotions. I mean, people are genuinely sad. But the reality is, this company is still growing like crazy. They're introducing new products. They've got a really bright future ahead of them. And they are going to do everything to get attention, to make it dominate our headspace, but it doesn't have to.
Well, okay. So this is a good tie-in, right? Because yes, you're right that this is a kind of a sentiment that's out there, but people are tying this sentiment of hatred for Elon, therefore impacting Tesla, to lower car sales. And people are very concerned, and they're saying, "Oh my God, people, what's going to happen to the brand damage? That's going to cause people to not buy cars in the future, therefore sell the stock." Now, we have, as a community, been trying our best in the last several weeks here to educate people to know that the reason why Q1 vehicle sales are going down is because of the transition of Model Y. You're going to stop producing these cars because you're producing a brand new version of Model Y. That's going to have less sales. But that's why tying this with Elon's announcement today about doubling the US production capacity, that's a big deal. Do you guys think that this announcement by Elon, doubling Tesla's US production output, by the way, doubling the vehicle output in the US over the next 2 years, is that new? Is that more than they've communicated before? Is that Cybercab? Who wants to address that first?
It's confirmation based on all things factored in that Tesla is meaningfully growing. He tied in the policies of this administration, what he knows about demand, what he knows about the products that are being built. He explicitly said a couple of those things, basically, and he announced it on March 11th. So on March 10th, 9th, 8th, the media would have you believing that Tesla sales are meaningfully impacted because of the work that he is doing in the government. And what he's telling you is that based on everything he knows today, including the work he's doing in the government, including the policies that this administration has, including he knows what products are under development, including he knows what his current order inflow rate is, that he has to add capacity and production output to what he has today. That was the message.
Yeah, you said that even the tariffs or the potential recession, this is Elon saying it's an act of faith in America. Tesla is going to double our output in the next 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's really talking about probably the decision not to go ahead with Giga Mexico and to focus on Austin and Fremont instead. So doubling production capacity, going off the table in their earnings deck, that's about 1 million additional units. I think that's doable with Austin and Fremont, especially Austin has a lot of excess capacity. So you can kind of say, hey, Trump's policies and tariffs led us to invest more in the US. He's kind of giving Trump a little win there, a little, bullet point, just like, Trump is supporting him, he's supporting Trump. And it really is true. They're investing in manufacturing in Austin. So it sounds like that's going to be a big focus for them for the Cybercab with the new, more affordable models, which is probably where most of those 1 million additional units are going to come from.
So here, we haven't heard from you?
Yeah, I think this was already going to happen, honestly, with the Cybercab and the new, more affordable vehicles. So I think this is just Elon reiterating, yeah, we sort of remain on track here. So that's good to hear, at least.
Yeah. Isn't it great also that he did spend, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute explaining the Cybercab President Trump asked them to explain this driverless vehicle, and I don't know what percentage of the U.S. population even know. The world probably know that this thing exists.
Very few people. Yeah, that would have been cool if he rolled up with that too. But yeah, it's a super interesting day. I mean, for a while, I felt like the loss of some liberal buyers would more than outweigh any potential new influx of conservative buyers due to Elon's political involvement. But I think my opinion on that is starting to change. In my private talks with some conservatives who have never owned or wanted an EV, they're not only starting to think about buying a Tesla, but some have already pulled the trigger and ordered. And now we're seeing prominent voices in the conservative arena, such as Sean Hannity on Fox News last night, publicly sharing their positive Tesla ownership experience, which is like, tell that to someone 4 years ago, they would have called you nuts that this would ever happen. And like 3.5 million people watch him every night, and they're mainly baby boomers. And it sounds crazy, but he could have a potentially pretty big positive influence on a lot of these Republicans' opinions on EVs. And of course, we had this event with Trump today, checking out Teslas with Elon. My preference would be that buying a Tesla wouldn't be political at all, but that's sort of where we are, and we have to accept that. And at least in the interim, with Elon's involvement in Doge, and his involvement won't last forever, but it will probably till next year, is my guess. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Tesla sales. Obviously, Tesla's losing some liberal buyers, but I haven't seen a conservative effort from conservatives to collectively encourage others to buy EVs, let alone Teslas, in this way before. It's a crazy time we're living in.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a great point, Sawyer, especially since just recently he was saying these cars don't go too far, you can't take a road trip with them. So I think that was part of the reason why you didn't see conservative buyers, even with their support of
You're doing so
Elon,
well.
picking up the
You're doing so well. Do it again, please.
I think that's part of why you didn't see conservative buyers picking up the slack as much. But maybe that changes now. We'll see.
Is it too much? Some people are out there saying that actually he's made it more divisive to see President Trump accept that Tesla. It's now even like, screw you liberals, as Sawyer was saying. It's like even more divisive to do this.
How much more divisive could you be? I mean,
True.
Yeah, I
we're
agree.
at the point that it's, I could never have foreseen. I mean, I certainly didn't foresee anything like this level of politicization of a product. I don't think I've ever seen the politicization of a product like this before. Maybe French fries, freedom fry. I've never seen anything quite like it. But I think Sawyer's right, because driving through the South recently in the Cybertruck, just the past couple of days, seeing the level of smiles and thumbs ups and encouragements and people coming over to say, what is this car all about? I've been doing this for the last couple of years, consistently, every launch or so, and seeing the amount of the change in attitude of people seeing the truck. It has been very marked indeed.
It's the opposite of what's happening here in Seattle right now. I know people in my, my group. We have a group of DM chat group in Tesla, people who are investors in Tesla here in the Northwest. And some of them have said, I will not choose to drive my Cybertruck downtown Seattle anymore for the time being. They're afraid. My own wife said, I don't want to go to this high-end mall. And I'm like, what? Like, really? This is how affected she is by, maybe you're right, as Omar was saying, this is just isolated violence. But the fact is that it's seeped into people's minds and they're concerned, and that's what matters. It really is perception that matters more than actual statistics.
Now the question is, like, obviously there might be a positive impact with Republicans and conservatives in the U.S., but most of Tesla's profit now comes, from abroad. So what kind of impact does this close political ties with Trump, what kind of impact does that have on conservatives across, in Europe and Australia and other parts of the world?
Well, the principal issue is China. Europe is a lost cause. Honestly, I think that Europe is probably going to feel the most of this. They're going to feel the brunt of this, because Europe is political. It's become political, and it's going to be fairly serious in Europe. The good thing is Europe has as many conservatives percentage-wise as US has. I mean, they have been bested at the voting booth. They have been beaten down, but they're becoming very vocal now. So I think we're going to see some interesting reflection of what's happening in the US in Europe. Australia is a different matter. It could really affect us. But the good thing is, I don't think it'll have the slightest impact on China at all. That's my read of the situation and what I'm hearing from colleagues in China.
And Europe is a very small percentage, right? That's like definitely less than 15% of the Tesla's revenue comes from Europe.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all, marginal profit is a very important thing. And the Tesla plant in Berlin has to get a production load to avoid, impacting seriously the gross margin. So it's not nothing by any manner of means. It could be quite serious.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.